You think speaking your truth is a sign of strength, my friend. It's actually the exact moment you become a servant to everyone else's whims. We've all felt that stinging heat in our chest, those words that fly out before we can catch them. And then, the silence, not of respect, but of pity. But what if I told you that this heat is actually a leak in your soul, a weight you were never meant to carry? You're tired of being a man made of paper, letting anyone with a match set your life on fire. Today, we journey to a hidden mountain forge to learn the cold strike. I will show you how to quench your impulses into unbreakable authority. By the end, you'll possess a clarity that silences the noise, and a strength that never needs to shout. But beware, there is a hidden reason why most men fail this process and remain papermen forever. A secret about the invisible burden that we are about to uncover. Listen closely. This story is for you. Elias sat at the head of the conference table, but he didn't feel like a leader. The air was thick with biting subtext, and when a junior associate threw a veiled insult his way, the reaction was visceral. A stinging heat crawled up his throat like a wildfire, and before he could think, he fired back. But instead of winning the argument, a suffocating silence descended, the kind born of collective pity. Elias had handed over his power on a silver platter because he let someone else dictate his pulse. This is the invisible burden, the soul-crushing exhaustion of defending an ego that is constantly under siege. He was like a hollow tree, impressive to look at, but ready to snap at the first sign of a storm. He was essentially a king who lost his crown every time he lost his cool. But why do we do this? Why do we keep picking up these stones of resentment and reaction that aren't even ours to carry? Elias realized that if someone could make him angry with a single word, they owned him. He was spending his life's currency on petty reactions, leaving nothing for the goals that actually mattered. He knew he needed a radical shift, a way to stop being made of paper. But as he sets out to find the legendary Master Thorn, he's about to discover that the greatest test isn't what he says, but a terrifying silence he isn't yet prepared to face. Elias reached the mountain forge, breathless and desperate for validation, launching into a tirade about how no one respects his hard work. But Master Thorn didn't offer a pat on the back. He offered a deafening rhythmic silence that sucked the very air out of Elias's ego. For an hour, the only response was the hammer hitting iron, forcing Elias to face the sharp, jagged edges of his own internal emptiness. He realized that his constant need to explain himself was actually a loud confession of his own weakness, a weight he was desperately trying to hand over to someone else. Thorn finally looked up and delivered a brutal truth. You are a man made of paper. Anyone with a match can set you on fire. To find respect, Elias would have to abandon the heat of his feelings and learn the power of the cold strike. But Thorn was holding back a crucial warning. The forge isn't just for metal, it is for the soul. And to survive the next trial, Elias would have to face a heat so intense it could either temper him or melt him into useless scrap. What Elias didn't know was that the rod Thorn was about to pull from the fire held a secret about invisible progress. A secret that explains why your current efforts to change always seem to fail. Thorn pulled a rod of iron from the coals, shimmering with a dangerous, unstable heat that radiated through the room. He asked Elias to place a heavy stone slab on it, but the glowing metal sagged like wet clay, surrendering immediately. This is your word when it is spoken in the heat of your feelings, Thorn explained. It has brilliance, but zero strength. You see, every time you react instantly, you are letting your power evaporate into the air, leaving your soul soft and easily bent by the world. Then, the master plunged the rod into frigid water. A violent hiss filled the forge, the sound of the ego being forcefully silenced. When it emerged, it was dark, matte, and possessed a quiet stillness far more intimidating than fire. This is invisible progress, the tempering process where you become exponentially stronger by withdrawing from external heat. Elias tried the weight again. And this time, the steel didn't even flinch. He finally felt the true weight of authority, the pride of being a foundation that doesn't buckle. But how do you keep this steel from cracking when the world's pressure becomes unbearable? There is one final ritual, a secret weapon of the mind, that turns this metaphor into a permanent shield, and it's the only way to ensure you never become a servant again. Elias stood in the silence, the cold steel steady in his grip. He finally realized that his feelings were not his personality. They were a treacherous weakness. He had been letting his enemies walk into his inner sanctum and flip his switches at will. But here is the truth most men never learn. Every time you give someone a piece of your mind, you are actually handing them a piece of your authority. Thorn whispered the mantra that would change everything. He who reacts is a servant. He who observes is a master. To anchor this, he taught Elias the ritual of the iron breath. Every time you feel that boil in your chest, you must visualize a vat of ice. You mentally plunge that red-hot reaction into the water, listen for the hiss, and watch the metal turn dark. Only then, after the 5-second pause, are you allowed to respond. Elias returned to the valley a different man. When his colleagues threw their matches, they hit the tempered steel of his soul and went out instantly. They weren't just confused. For the first time, they were truly afraid of his quiet power. But how do you maintain this iron breath when life tries to crush you with stones you weren't meant to carry? The ritual is the start, but there is a specific blueprint for total emotional liberation that we haven't touched on yet. Something that determines if you stay a master or slide back into being a servant. The forge is always open, and the heat of the world will never stop trying to soften your resolve. You've seen Elias transform from a man of paper into a master of the cold strike, but knowing the secret and living it every single day are two very different things. Many of the stories you hear here aren't just stories. They reflect the invisible weight you may be carrying every day, the stones of other people's expectations, the heat of their insults, and the pressure of 1,000 opinions you were never meant to carry. If you're tired of holding pain, responsibility, and guilt that were never yours, I created a specialized blueprint called The Weight of Stones That Are Not Yours. It's for those who want to finally let go of the invisible burden, set unbreakable boundaries, and live with the lightness of a soul that has been properly tempered. To ensure your transformation is permanent, when you get the ebook today, I am including 2 essential tools for your forge. Bonus 1. Learning to let go of the stones that are not yours. A practical guide to identifying which burdens are yours and which are just noise from the world. Bonus 2. When saying no is an act of self-love. The masterclass on the cold strike of communication, teaching you to protect your peace without guilt. Don't let the heat of this moment evaporate into another lost opportunity. The true master knows when to strike while the iron is hot. You are the cold strike now. The link to claim your copy and both bonuses is in the description and in the pinned comment.